Nina stared at the sprawling, decrepit mansion before her, nestled in the heart of the dense blackwood forest. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. It was a house with a dark history, known throughout the town for its sinister reputation. For years, Blackwood Manor had stood abandoned, its windows shattered, and its walls cloaked in ivy. No one dared venture near it, let alone step inside. But Nina had a secret, a reason why she had chosen this forsaken place as her new home. Her past was shrouded in darkness, filled with unspeakable horrors she had tried to leave behind. She believed that the isolation of the mansion would provide her the solace she desperately needed to heal and forget. As she crossed the threshold, a chill raced down her spine. The mansion's grand foyer greeted her with dust-covered chandeliers and faded portraits of long-dead ancestors. But something else lurked in the shadows, a presence that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. The days turned into weeks as Nina settled into Blackwood Manor. The old house groaned and creaked with each gust of wind, as if it were alive and resentful of its new occupant. Late at night, Nina would hear faint whispers echoing through the hallways. They were unintelligible, the voices of the long-deceased, murmuring secrets she couldn't decipher. She told herself it was merely the wind or the product of her troubled mind, but doubt gnawed at her. One evening, while exploring the mansion's labyrinthine corridors, she stumbled upon a hidden door in the attic. Beyond it lay a forgotten chamber filled with dusty books and arcane symbols etched onto the walls. It was a room of unspeakable secrets, a place that had been sealed away for a reason. Among the ancient tomes and curious artifacts in the hidden chamber, Nina found a journal. It belonged to a previous resident of the manor, a man named Samuel Blackwood. His entry spoke of dark rituals, dealings with malevolent entities, and a descent into madness that had consumed him. Reading Samuel's journal filled Nina with a sense of dread. It seemed that the sinister reputation of Blackwood Manor had not been exaggerated. She couldn't shake the feeling that something evil dwelled within its walls. Night after night, Nina's sleep was plagued by vivid, disturbing dreams. In these visions, she found herself in the past, witnessing the horrors that had befallen the mansion's previous occupants. She watched as Samuel Blackwood conducted unholy rituals, summoning entities from the abyss. She saw the tormented souls of those who had died within the mansion's cursed walls, their anguished faces forever etched in her memory. As the days went by, the line between dreams and reality blurred. Nina began to see glimpses of these spectral figures during her waking hours, lurking in the corners of her vision. Nina's isolation in the mansion was interrupted one evening when a neighbor from the nearby town, a man named Dr. Harrison, came to visit. He had heard rumors of her arrival and wanted to extend a welcoming hand. Dr. Harrison was a curious man with an air of mystery about him. He spoke of the mansion's history, its dark past, and the rumors that had circulated for generations. He offered his assistance should Nina ever need it, but his presence only deepened the unease that had settled in her heart. As the weeks turned into months, the haunting presence within Blackwood Manor grew stronger. Nina's nightmares became more intense, her visions more vivid, and the whispers in the walls more sinister. She began to experience physical manifestations of the supernatural. Objects moved on their own, spectral figures appeared in her mirrors, and the temperature in certain rooms plummeted to bone-chilling lows. Nina felt as though the very fabric of reality was unraveling around her, and she feared that she was losing her sanity. She had no choice but to delve deeper into the mansion's dark history, to uncover the truth behind the malevolent force that threatened to consume her. Nina's investigation into the mansion's history intensified. She visited the town's archives, poring over old newspapers and journals, searching for any mention of the dark secrets that had plagued Blackwood Manor. What she discovered sent shivers down her spine. Decades ago, a series of grisly murders had taken place within the mansion's walls. The victims were said to have been driven to madness, their bodies found in grotesque and ritualistic poses. The murders remained unsolved, and the mansion had been abandoned ever since. The whispers within the mansion grew louder and more desperate, as if the spirits trapped within its confines were trying to communicate with her. Nina couldn't ignore their cries any longer. She had to find a way to free them from their torment. Determined to make contact with the restless spirits, Nina sought the help of a local medium, Madame Isadora. Isadora arrived at Blackwood Manor one stormy night, her eyes filled with a knowing sorrow. Together, they conducted a séance in the very room where the gruesome murders had occurred. The air grew thick with tension as Isadora chanted incantations, attempting to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Suddenly, a cold, malevolent presence filled the room. The candles flickered, and a voice spoke through Isadora, a voice filled with bitterness and rage. It claimed to be the spirit of Samuel Blackwood, the mansion's former owner, and the source of the evil that had plagued it for generations. Through Isadora, Samuel Blackwood recounted the terrible deeds he had committed in his quest for power and immortality. He had made dark pacts with otherworldly entities, inviting malevolent forces into the mansion, and sealing the fates of those who had crossed his path. Nina pleaded with Samuel to release the trapped souls and end the curse that bound them all. But the vengeful spirit demanded something in return, a living vessel through which he could regain his corporeal form. Fearing the consequences of refusing, Nina reluctantly agreed, knowing that she would be putting herself in grave danger. The moment the bargain was struck, a sinister transformation began to take hold of Nina. Her body became a vessel for Samuel's malevolent spirit, and she found herself in a nightmarish battle for control of her own mind. At times, she could hear Samuel's whispered commands, urging her to commit unspeakable acts. But there was still a glimmer of her own will, a determination to break free from the grip of the vengeful spirit and put an end to the curse. Haunted by both her own actions and those of Samuel, Nina embarked on a perilous journey to find a way to sever the connection and release the trapped souls. Through research and a series of cryptic clues, Nina learned of a ritual that could potentially break the bond with Samuel Blackwood's spirit. It required rare ingredients and a perilous journey into the heart of the Blackwood forest, to a place where the veil between worlds was thinnest. With a group of unlikely allies, including Dr. Harrison and Madame Isadora, Nina ventured into the forest on a moonless night. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive as they neared their destination, and they knew that they were not alone. Deep within the heart of the Blackwood forest, they discovered an ancient, overgrown cemetery that had been lost to time. It was a place where the restless spirits of the forest converged, a nexus of supernatural energy that held the key to the ritual's success. As they performed the ritual, the very earth seemed to tremble beneath their feet. Shadowy figures emerged from the trees, whispering dark incantations, and an otherworldly presence descended upon them. The ritual demanded a sacrifice, a piece of Nina's own soul, and the cost was higher than anyone could have anticipated. Her connection to Samuel Blackwood's spirit weakened, but the malevolent force within her remained. Nina's soul had been fractured by the ritual, and she found herself wrestling with the remnants of Samuel's spirit, which still clung to her like a parasite. The mansion itself seemed to come alive, its walls oozing with a sickly, black substance that pulsated with malevolence. Haunted by her own actions and the darkness within her, Nina was trapped in a nightmarish cycle of possession and release. She couldn't escape the curse that bound her to Blackwood Manor, and the spirits of the past grew more vengeful with each passing day. Within the hidden chambers of the mansion, Nina discovered a forgotten entity, an ancient being imprisoned long before Samuel Blackwood's time. This entity, known as the Obsidian Serpent, was a malevolent force that predated the cursed history of the mansion itself. As she delved deeper into the entity's history, she realized that Samuel had unwittingly unleashed the Obsidian Serpent during his quest for power. It had fed on the fear, anger, and suffering of those who had lived and died within Blackwood Manor, growing stronger with each passing generation. Nina knew that if she were to ever break free from the curse, she would have to confront the Obsidian Serpent and find a way to banish it from the mansion. Nina's battle with the malevolent forces that plagued her grew more intense with each passing day. She could feel the obsidian serpent's presence gnawing at the edges of her consciousness, whispering promises of power and control. Her allies, Dr. Harrison and Madame Isadora, stood by her side, their own lives intertwined with the curse of Blackwood Manor. Together, they sought a way to weaken the obsidian serpent's hold on the mansion and free themselves from the endless cycle of torment. But the entity was not easily vanquished. It possessed an intelligence and malevolence that defied understanding, and it would stop at nothing to maintain its dominion over Blackwood Manor. As Nina delved deeper into the mansion's hidden passages and secret chambers, she began to unravel the disturbing history of those who had come before her. The walls themselves seemed to whisper their stories, and the spectral figures that lurked in the shadows revealed the depths of their suffering. She learned of the countless souls who had been ensnared by the mansion's curse, their lives torn asunder by the obsidian serpent's insatiable hunger for despair. She felt their pain, their anger, and their need for release. Haunted by the memories of those who had perished within the mansion's walls, Nina vowed to confront the obsidian serpent and put an end to its reign of terror once and for all. Nina knew that to confront the obsidian serpent, she would need knowledge and power beyond anything she had encountered before. In her relentless search for answers, she uncovered a forbidden ritual hidden deep within the mansion's archives. This dark ritual, known as the Eclipse Convergence, had been used by the mansion's previous owners in their desperate attempts to control the obsidian serpent's malevolent influence. It required the alignment of celestial bodies during a rare celestial event, a convergence of cosmic forces that only occurred once in a generation. As the celestial event approached, Nina, Dr. Harrison, and Madame Isadora prepared to perform the forbidden ritual, hoping that it would weaken the obsidian serpent's grip on Blackwood Manor. On the night of the Eclipse Convergence, the mansion's grand foyer was transformed into an otherworldly chamber. An intricate circle of salt was drawn on the floor, and candles flickered around the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As the celestial event reached its zenith, Nina, Dr. Harrison, and Madame Isadora joined hands and chanted the incantation that had been passed down through generations. The very air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, and the mansion itself quivered in response. In that moment, a portal to the astral plane opened before them, revealing a nightmarish realm inhabited by tortured spirits and the shadowy presence of the obsidian serpent. With the portal open, Nina and her allies stepped into the astral plane, confronting the obsidian serpent on its own twisted battleground. The malevolent entity manifested itself as a colossal, writhing serpent, its obsidian scales reflecting a darkness that seemed to devour all light. The battle that ensued was unlike anything they had ever faced. The obsidian serpent unleashed torrents of psychic energy, threatening to overwhelm their minds. Nina felt herself being pulled into the depths of despair, the entity feeding on her fear and anguish. But she refused to surrender. With sheer determination and the strength of her allies, they fought back, using the power of the Eclipse Convergence to weaken the obsidian serpent's hold on the mansion and the trapped souls within. As the battle raged on in the astral plane, the mansion itself began to react. Its walls shook, and the very foundation of the house seemed to rebel against the malevolent force that had plagued it for so long. With one final desperate surge of power, Nina and her allies unleashed a blast of energy that struck at the heart of the obsidian serpent. The entity let out a deafening, otherworldly scream, its form twisting and contorting as it dissolved into a dark, swirling void. The mansion's walls ceased their pulsating, and the oppressive atmosphere that had gripped Blackwood Manor for generations lifted. The obsidian serpent was banished, its malevolent influence shattered. In the wake of the obsidian serpent's defeat, the healing process for both Nina and the mansion was a slow and arduous one. The fractured pieces of Nina's soul began to mend, but the scars of her possession and the horrors she had witnessed still haunted her. Blackwood Manor, too, showed signs of recovery. The once cursed rooms were restored to their former glory, and the atmosphere of dread that had permeated the house for generations began to dissipate. Nina and her allies knew that the battle was far from over. The malevolent forces that had plagued Blackwood Manor were gone, but the scars of the past ran deep, and they would have to remain vigilant to ensure that the darkness did not return. Despite the sense of renewal that had settled over Blackwood Manor, there were lingering signs that the malevolent forces had not been entirely banished. Nina would still hear faint whispers in the hallways, and spectral figures occasionally appeared in her peripheral vision. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond her senses, a lingering presence that refused to be extinguished. Nina knew that she could never truly escape the horrors of the past, and she remained on guard, ready to confront any darkness that might threaten to return.